Happy Monday, if that's even possible. Sorry, we can't do 6 Saturdays and one Sunday, but I appreciate you joining me here at the start of the week. And we do have a new invest that is likely going to be our next tropical system over the central Atlantic, but that's not it. A couple of other waves being monitored as well, set to move off of Africa over the next week or so. And models are hinting there'll be some possible development with those down the road as well. So, will any of these be a threat to land? Well, we're going to talk about what we're seeing now and what could change, as well as more. A tropical storm in the Pacific, and we do have a coastal low moving into North Carolina and Virginia here, bringing some cool, wet weather over the next day or so. So I appreciate you joining me here. We're going to get right to it here, and by the way, if you have not yet become a subscriber, I encourage you to do so. That gives you the ability to see latest content as it comes out. I do post quite a bit to my community page, so even though I can't get to a video every single day or twice a day like some folks might, we're still going to have updates for you as necessary. So appreciate that. And as always, welcome and welcome back if you are a subscriber. We're going to get right to it here and take a look at Zoom Earth. And you can see things are starting to get busier here after what's been a relatively quiet first 10 days or so of the month of September. The Atlantic in particular, quite quiet, which is not typical, but is not completely unheard of. We still have plenty of days left in the hurricane season to go, so we can't rule out another storm or two impacting land here. And you can see our invest right now has a 90% chance of becoming a tropical depression or storm over the next week, and a decent chance as well between now and Wednesday afternoon. In the Pacific, we do have Tropical Storm Mario, which has come back with a new life. It died over the weekend, went down into the underworld, came back out of the pipe, and here it is. Well defined here, stronger tropical storm. Maybe we'll try to level up to a hurricane. We'll have to wait and see on that. It's going to be close, but no immediate the threat to land, although moisture does come up into California. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the video. Another disturbance could follow suit here over the Eastern Pacific. So you can see where things are busiest right now, mainly on the Eastern Pacific side, but beginning to pick up as well across the deep tropical Atlantic basin. In the Western Pacific, I am monitoring a couple of areas of low pressure, neither of which shows signs of becoming something major. But in the Philippines, a lot of rain is possible here. Now, the reason things are starting to get active after what's been a lull, as you can see on this Huffmuller diagram, that we are indeed seeing an area of increased rising motion here, whereas back at the beginning of the month, we saw sinking motion in brown here. So the green indicates the potential for air to rise. The brown indicates sinking air. And overall, the basin had been relatively quiet since we got through Hurricane Aaron and weak Tropical Storm Fernand because of a large scale amount of sinking, warm air aloft, keeping things quite stable. Now you'll see there is an impulse that is moving through the Eastern Pacific today that will eventually cross into the central and eastern Atlantic, meaning we're likely to see an uptick in storm activity, at least for the next week, possibly even longer than that. And that is not unexpected here. That's something I've been tracking for several weeks at this time as that wave crosses here. And you can see with one storm in the basin right now, we are likely going to see two more over the coming days here. Here's a look at the Eastern Pacific. I mentioned Tropical Storm Mario. Winds are now up to 65 miles per hour. There's a slim chance it tries to get close to hurricane strength, but that's got to happen pretty quickly. Likely, we're going to see Mario weaken here and die as it meets his boss here, and likely in that cooler water over the next couple of days. But that moisture does come up into California and the Southwest here. Behind it, another wave has a 70% chance of formation. At this point, neither of those looks to be a direct threat to land or certainly to Mexico, but moisture does get picked up by troughs that enter the Eastern Pacific. So we are going to see that rain spreading up through portions of the Sonoran Desert and up into southwestern United States as well. So you can see here on the map, this is Mario real quick. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about him, but here he is. The next area right now, very disorganized, but we may see a weak circulation somewhere in here. And that's likely going to follow Mario here as well. And things are getting pretty busy here around the Central American gyre, but right now wind shear is awfully strong. So with this flow here coming around the base of our tropical storm or our upper level trough here, unlikely we're going to see a tropical storm at least over the next 5 days, maybe even the next 10. Beyond that, things could start to pick up. Now we're going to focus on the Atlantic basin, and we do have a broad area of low pressure forming, meaning Unlike with the wave from about 11 days ago, we actually have a circulation out there. It's not in the best spot to flourish, but it is in a place where it can grow some. And I'm going to talk about that here coming up in the video quite a bit more. But I do want to first just give you an overview of what's going on, especially closer to land, because what's going on out here is a ways away and nothing to really be super worried about just yet. But you can see here we've got low pressure forming off the North Carolina coast. And that is eventually going to move inland here overnight into tomorrow. It's delayed a little bit from where we thought yesterday, but it is coming. And elsewhere, the tropics are fairly quiet for the time being. The Gulf is quite hostile here with a lot of mid and high level clouds streaming in from the east and or from the west to east here. You can see that we're going to have a lot of clouds crossing Florida, Louisiana, southeastern Texas, but really nothing to form because the reason why is our surface low is actually here out of the east. So we've got strong westerlies coming up and over easterlies, and that is going to create a hostile environment for any kind of storm development, at least over the next few days. We do have a flare up here in the Western Caribbean. Models are not indicating any great chances for any development, but this will be an area we've got to watch at this point. The wind shear should start to come down over the coming days. But at this point, it's equally likely that this ends up in the Pacific as well. There's a chance a piece of it tries to form here, and some models have been indicating that's something to watch towards the weekend and into next week over the Gulf and across the Northwest Caribbean. But right now, I'm not seeing any signs of that happening immediately. Here's our storm spinning east of North Carolina. We see some heavy rain and gusty winds impacting the Outer Banks primarily. It's a struggle to get this to come inland, but that is expected to happen later on here as we see a large upper level trough, which you can kind of see right in here, shaped like this, is going to steer this system inland here. That trough's actually going to dig down and pull the flow around more to the southeast here. So we're getting some beneficial rain here in inland areas of Virginia, the Mid-Atlantic, North Carolina, maybe even into the mountains of West Virginia over the next, say, 36 hours. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more here before we get to what's going on out in the Atlantic. You can see right now a very unlikely suspect here for this to become a tropical storm. There's a weak circulation here. There's kind of a mid-level circulation here. And we do have thunderstorm heads here popping up. You can see some higher storm towering clouds here, meaning some heavy rain falling out here and some lightning frequently striking. So this is a nasty day to be out in the Outer Banks and just offshore. In fact, we're seeing some pretty gusty winds out of this. But inland, we have a lot of cloud cover, but we're seeing breaks in it due to the fact that there's still some dry air in place. And if you take a look at the radar and the observations, this is from Radarscope Pro, you're going to see it's really nasty just offshore. It's windy near the coast. We have wind gusts around 30 miles per hour at Kill Devil Hills, 31 at New Bern, 28 down in Jacksonville, and even inland a little bit breezy as well. But the air's pretty dry. In fact, dew points are still in the 50s around the triangle. So what is offshore is going to work its way inland, but it's going to take a little while to get things saturated. So this is push back our timeline a little bit in that the heavier rain that could have gotten into the triangle and Fayetteville and even Wilmington is probably not going to happen much this evening. It's more likely to happen late tonight into the first portion of tomorrow. And tomorrow is going to be an interesting day here. You're going to see the rain spreads inland. See, it's starting to creep into the I-95 corridor here late tonight. This is about 1 a.m. overnight. And then you'll see it picks up quite a bit here with this one band likely to form and spread inland over the inner banks, over eastern North Carolina, northeastern North Carolina, and southern portions of Virginia as well. So tomorrow should be a dismal day in the Dismal Swamp and around the Hampton Roads area, with a likelihood of 1 to 3 inches of rain falling in the morning and maybe a little bit more in the afternoon. In fact, maybe as much as a few inches around Rocky Mount and up to Roanoke Rapids, and up to Emporia and over to Virginia Beach and Hampton and not Hampton, Suffolk and those areas, but maybe even all the way up to Richmond and up to the northern neck here. We could pick up locally up to an inch later tonight, tomorrow, and through tomorrow night. After that, there's going to be some rain spreading up the coast here. I do want to show you amounts aren't going to be nearly as substantial on Wednesday, but light amounts of rain, maybe moderate amounts across South Jersey, Delaware, Eastern Maryland. it's been a while since we've seen much rain. So this is going to be noticeable here. What's also going to be noticeable will be the temperatures tumbling here. It's nice today, but take a look at tomorrow, quite a bit cooler. And if it rains all day, it's quite possible that afternoon temperatures in the Piedmont up into northwestern Virginia struggle to get out of the 50s. They may start in the 60s and fall back, but this will be one of our coolest days going all the way back to the spring. So get ready for the change. Fall is indeed coming. This isn't going to last, so it should warm back up after this system exits. But we're definitely going to see cooler weather tomorrow. And as we head into the day on Wednesday, temperatures still a bit on the cool side here due to the cloud cover hovering over inland areas of the mid-Atlantic, but we should start to warm back up at the beaches. So after we get through the next 36 hours or so, things do start to improve. We are going to see gusty winds continuing, mainly just offshore, but we could see gusts towards this evening approaching 60 miles per hour around Hatteras, maybe 30 to 40 over coastal portions of the southern Delmarva, southeastern Virginia, all the way down to say about Cape Lookout. Probably not so windy around Cape Fear. The strongest winds are expected here later this evening into the overnight. There's actually going to be some wind funneling up Chesapeake Bay tomorrow morning, and the Jersey Shore could see wind gusts over 30 miles per hour. Farther north, this isn't really your storm in New England or on Long Island or New York City. It'll be a little breezy out, but I don't think we're talking strong winds at this point. As the system occludes, it's going to weaken substantially here, and we lose the wind by the time we get to about Thursday afternoon. So a nasty little coastal storm, but nothing tropical at this point. I did want to touch on that because a lot of folks are asking me, hey, when's it going to rain? How much rain we're going to get? It's a topic of conversation at the gym early in the morning. People know who I am. So we're going to talk about that. But now we're going to focus on the tropics and what's going on out here in the Atlantic. So this is our invest here. It's very broad, but it's a much bigger system than the last wave that struggled mightily. And models picked up on that and then killed it quickly. We have a lot more support with this than we did with the last system. So more than likely, this is going to be a tropical depression and then tropical storm in the coming days. And it's not it. You'll see there's more action here getting ready to leave Senegal and Guinea-Bissau here. This will be our next area that potentially could try to develop. And then there's another wave behind it here, moving from Nigeria into Burkina Faso, as well as Benin and Togo. And that's probably got about 4 days before it enters the Atlantic off the African coast. And you can see here on this view from the Meteosat out in Western Africa, kind of a 1, 2, 3 setup at this time. And we're going to track these as models all indicate they have potential down the road. They're not going to die quickly like we saw over the last couple of weeks. So get ready, as the wave train is likely going to be in its most active phase here that we see in the tropical season. Here's Invest 92L, 90% chance of formation somewhere between the central Atlantic and to the northeast of the Leeward Islands. It is going to enter warmer water over time. It gradually gets warmer. And that will likely put it in a spot where it can strengthen. However, looking at the infrared right now, it is a struggle to see where this is actually going to form a low-level center. It's very broad, very disorganized. And before it got dark here, you can see a large system, but a very disorganized one at this point. Sometimes the smaller ones actually spin up and wrap a lot more than the bigger ones. And if you think about watching like professional football, for example, your bigger offensive and defensive linemen just can't move as quickly as the smaller guys. And that's kind of what we're seeing here, where things can't wrap up because it's so big. But we have a large amount of outflow here and really not much getting in the way of this forming other than this upper level trough, which is going to come into play here over the weekend. That'll send a little bit drier air in and probably limit this thing from getting too strong too quickly, and may actually weaken it a little bit here as we get to the weekend. So we're going to be watching that. That upper level trough does come into play. But again, if we compare this with the last one 11 days ago, it's like night and day. They're in the same location. The track's a little bit different here. You can see 92L should gain some latitude here. Even though there is dry air surrounding it, it's a much bigger system that has just a much better spot to strengthen. So models are indicating that it could get to tropical storm strength here tomorrow, but more likely it's going to be on Wednesday. After that, we see quite a bit of divergence in what happens. This is common until a storm actually forms. But generally speaking, a pretty good shot at this being a tropical storm for the second half of this week through the weekend and probably into next week. An outside chance that it gets to hurricane intensity as well by the time we get to the weekend. Next week, I think the future is actually going to end up better for this, but it will be over the open waters of the Atlantic. We do need to watch it, though, in Bermuda. You can see the tropical tracks here actually tug the storm northwest in response to that trough. Then high pressure builds in, and then there's a weakness in the high that allows us to gain some latitude. And so the spread is going to grow where you've got possibilities of it continuing west-northwest before turning, possibilities of it turning well before Bermuda, or possibilities that it comes up right towards Bermuda here. But it's a ways off for that to happen. In fact, 168 hours here gets us to the end of the weekend. Bermuda would not even be impacted potentially until maybe next Tuesday or Wednesday, the middle of next week. So ensembles, as you can imagine, are going to be all over the place. But generally speaking, show a developing system here. Some develop a stronger system near Bermuda. So that's something we've got to watch here in about 200 to 220 hours from now. One solution on the European ensemble takes us closer to where Aaron tracked, but not as strong as Aaron at this point. So it's not quite the same setup. The GFS ensemble has more uncertainty than the other models on average. It has less skill here. So we're going to see outliers going west, but more than likely you can see this is a recurving system here, and quite a bit of support. This could be a stronger feature, not just a hurricane, but potentially even a major hurricane. The ship's model, not my favorite one, but you can see it gets pulled northward. I don't see it getting to hurricane strength this fast, unless we have this turn into a tropical storm very quickly. It's probably going to take its time. You are going to notice here, though, as the system comes up into this area here, whoops, I'm trying to pull my pen out, which you can't see, but it's getting in the way here. And you can see the wind shear does come up some, and that's something to keep an eye on. And the relative humidity comes down. So the environment up in here, when we get to later this week, isn't going to be quite as ideal as what we saw with Hurricane Aaron when it went nuclear here to Category 5 a couple weeks ago. We've got some wind shear here. We've got a little bit less relative humidity, and we don't have very high amounts of heat content. So there is going to be a ceiling on how this system evolves, at least over the next week. Model tracks, again, all over the place. You see heavily weighted to a recurve, but we do have ensemble support for this to go by north of Puerto Rico and towards the Bahamas. That's a way off before we even can think about that. But generally speaking, this is probably going to pass, I would say, safely to the northeast of the Leeward Islands. At least we hope so at this point. So we're going to watch it here. If it stays weaker, it's got the possibility of going farther west. If it's stronger, it's going to find a way to go around that ridge. And then the question mark is going to be, is it going to be a Bermuda system, or is it going to be a true fish storm? Here's the Canadian. Again, it's east of Bermuda, fortunately, but we still have support for some ensemble members going a little bit farther to the west. And the Google DeepMind is closer to Bermuda than the others. And this is the AI model, the one that, in my opinion, has done a little bit better here with these waves coming off of Africa. The DeepMind was the first one to drop 91L like a rock, and it's the first one to take 92L and recurve it near Bermuda. So we've got to watch that pretty carefully. And good news is that we're going to have plenty of time for that to happen. Now, that's not the only thing on the map here. You can see this is likely Gabrielle here by the time we get to the end of this week. Then we've got our second feature, and that's a low rider here. It's actually going to follow this system, but not get picked up by the same trough. And so in the islands, something we're going to have to keep an eye on. And then there's another one behind it. So Gabrielle for sure, but maybe Humberto and Imelda on deck afterwards here by the time we get to the weekend. And just something to watch right now. As you can imagine, the uncertainty grows substantially here, but we don't have any U.S. threats, at least over the next week and a half. However, even though Gabrielle's likely turning away, and I would say probably more likely this direction than this direction, I'm not going to rule it out. This feature here gets to a spot where it's into the Western Caribbean in about 12 to 13 days. And that's something we are going to have to watch a little more carefully. And then the one behind it looks like it's going to be a fish storm as well. So 1 out of 3 is going to be the biggest concern for the potentially down the road for the United States. But again, it's awfully far out in the future. So we can't really get super caught up in that. And then I do want to update this here with the latest other Google DeepMind ensemble. And you can see 1, 2, and then here comes 3. And not much has changed here, but number 3, on this particular ensemble here is actually a little bit more threatening to the Leeward Islands than, say, it was on the others. So, likely recur from Gabrielle, potentially a category 3 or 4 hurricane down the road when it gets to near Bermuda, but it's going to be on the struggle bus for the next 5 to 6 days, I believe. After that, it should be in a pretty good spot to strengthen. But at this point, it's pretty unlikely to be United States East Coast threat. Something though, certainly watch in Bermuda. The next two, though, definitely need to be watched more carefully. As you can see here, we've got, again, it's 15 days away, but we've got at least something a little bit more nerve wracking to keep an eye on. So we'll talk about that more in the future, but I do want to break down what's going to happen with this system. And you can see it's going to gradually get its act together, but it's got dry air in the way here. You can see that dry air. This is Wednesday night, so it's not going to be off to the races. And then you can see eventually it does try to deepen some, but this may struggle. You can see the one behind it, by the way, on this particular model on the H-Worth. And that one isn't going to be rushing out of the gates to strengthen, but it is going to take that lower latitude approach. So we will finally start to see this thing getting its act together. And I think maybe later this weekend is going to be the more likely time for this to potentially strengthen into a stronger storm and eventually a hurricane after that. Here are the HAVS models real quick. They're not showing anything much different, but there are some differences in the details, as you could imagine. But again, the HAVS says this is going to be struggling until we get to about Saturday afternoon. Then maybe it becomes a hurricane. By the way, don't cover your eyes here, but the HAVS model does have the next one quickly strengthening and becoming a hurricane. And so that would generally track towards the Caribbean islands. And that's something we got to be concerned with. But again, this can change very frequently, and it probably will. And then the other HAVS model here, as you can see, kind of the same deal as the A. It is actually substantially weaker than the B is weaker than the A. So it doesn't even have this really organizing much into a much more than a weak tropical storm and through Saturday. It's after this feature goes away that we have to watch it, but this would be a weaker scenario, and that would be obviously good news, but we may pay for it with the next one afterwards. It's got a category 3 hurricane out basically in the location where this system is now, but heading more on a westerly trajectory than a northwesterly trajectory. So we're going to watch that pretty closely for you. The larger scale here on the GFS, you see likely Gabrielle here. You see the GFS isn't quite as excited about the next two, but it does have them out there. In my opinion, the GFS is probably going to be overdone on intensity on what should be Gabrielle, at least on Saturday, but it probably has a chance early next week to strengthen substantially. And if it gets out of the way, it gives this system room to breathe and maybe the one after it. So, we could sit here and look at all of these models all day long, but really there's just not a whole lot of skill until this system forms. So I'm not going to be putting out a track map or anything crazy like that, which you may have seen out there by other organizations. I am going to be patient with this, but I do think it is something worth watching and probably has a chance of being our second hurricane. And we may get our third hurricane behind it at some point. As far as the Gulf goes, I still can't figure things out here. You see that GFS loves to spin pieces of vorticity up and take them across the Caribbean into the Eastern Gulf. These solutions are all over the place at this point. I do think we are going to head into a direction where the Gulf has to be watched, but it's really uncertain at this point to get into the detail of that. So enjoy the time we have right now. And if you're a praying person, keep praying the storms away, because so far the prayer has been working well. I know we've had a lot over the last few years, and we've had October storms, and we obviously can't rule things out during the second to third week here of September, with another month and a half to go of our peak season and 2.5 months to go of our total season. But right now, this is obviously encouraging for those in the U.S., whereas those in Bermuda need to watch, and then those eventually in the Caribbean islands are going to have to watch this as well. So speaking of prayer, speaking of the word of God, I do want to leave you with some encouragement here. Paul tells us in the first letter to Thessalonians 5:11, therefore comfort each other and edify one another, just as you also are doing. And this is what I love about being a Christian. It's the ability to be part of a larger community of believers, the ability to get together and pray for one another, comfort one another, and build people up. There's two types of people in the world. There are people that are builders, and there are people that are destroyers. And God understands this because he knows Satan is out there working hard on those that are builders, turning them into destroyers. But my My charge for you is this: do you want to be a builder or do you want to be a destroyer? Because I definitely have moments where I want to destroy stuff. Trust me, I do. We all get frustrated and angry. I mean, there's a gym for that. Trust me. But at the end of the day, our time here is finite on earth. But if you choose to follow Jesus Christ, then you are given a new life. You are given eternal life in heaven. And that is a reward for somebody who, in my opinion, and again, just my opinion, is somebody who's building up others around them. If you're destroying other people around you, it's going to be a tough sell here. I mean, if you've accepted Christ, then the nice part is you can repent to God and you can ask for forgiveness, and that forgiveness is granted to you. But we're all going to sin and we're all going to struggle with that. The good news here is that if you have joined me, I think you've been brought here for a reason. It's to hear this word today. Yes, the weather is important. Yes, it can be really bad. But at the end of the day, what really matters is where you spend eternity. And I really hope you've made that choice to follow Jesus and to spend eternity in heaven, because I want to be able to talk to you about weather for eternal and infinite number of years beyond here on our short time on earth. So hope you all have a great evening, and thank you for watching. And we'll be back here soon. God bless.